Have you ever looked at an Amish farm and wondered why their trees are planted in such an odd, almost wild pattern? It seems so unlike their careful ways. But this isn't a mistake. It's a hidden genius, a brilliant trick for owning land that keeps giving forever. They cracked the code on endless resources, showing a deep, silent wisdom for the land, hidden right there in the dirt. It's easy to look at that and think it's just old-fashioned. No big tractors, no chemical sprays, just doing things the way they've always been done. And we all pretty much assume that means they get less out of their land. It just makes sense, right? Modern farming is all about squeezing out the biggest harvest possible with technology. But here's the thing. That's not true at all. Researchers actually studied a bunch of Amish farms, and what they found is kind of shocking. Their harvests were almost identical to regular modern farms. For example, they grew just a tiny bit less sweet corn, but they actually grew more lettuce. All without the stuff we're told you absolutely need. So how on earth do they pull that off? It's not about being simple, it's about being incredibly smart, and it all comes down to a different way of thinking about time. According to one expert, Dr. Catherine Morrison, the secret is that the Amish think in decades, not seasons. Every single choice they make, what to plant, where to plow, and yes, how they manage their trees, is based on one simple idea. Their family will still be farming that same piece of land 30, 40, even 50 years from now. And when that's your starting point, it changes everything. You stop thinking about what you can get from the land this year, and you start thinking about how to make sure the land can provide for your family forever. Those trees aren't just trees. They're a savings account. They're a retirement plan. And they're the key to a brilliant system that makes sure the family never has to sell their farm. Okay, so if this isn't about being old-fashioned, what is it about it? Because when you look at it, you see a system with huge limitations. No chemical fertilizers, no high-tech machinery, and often not a lot of land to work with. Most of us would assume that means they just accept smaller harvests, that it's a trade-off for living a simpler life. But that's the biggest mistake people make. It's not about accepting less, it's about getting the absolute most out of their land, just with a totally different set of rules. Like, this isn't minimalism. It's a system that has been pushed to the absolute peak of efficiency. Take something like crop rotation. To most farmers, that just means you plant corn one year and maybe soybeans the next. Simple. But what the Amish are doing is on another level. One expert described it as being less like gardening and more like precision medicine for the soil. Every single thing they plant is chosen to heal and strengthen the ground, getting it ready for the next crop. It's an incredibly sophisticated process that just happens to look simple from the outside. And when you look at the results, you can see it works. The real test came during a massive drought a few years back. Conventional farms in the area were devastated, losing up to 30% of their crops. The ground was just too dry. But the Amish farms, with their incredibly healthy, water-rich soil, they lost less than half that. Because their system isn't designed to get the biggest possible harvest in one perfect, sunny year. It's designed to survive. It's built to handle the worst-case scenario and to make sure the farm will still be there for their kids and their grandkids. So that raises the question, what does this system actually look like on the ground? If you look closely at the edges of their fields, you'll see it. To most of us, it might just look like an overgrown fence row. But this is one of the most important parts of the entire system. It's a carefully planned border of trees, shrubs, and wildflowers that acts like a living wall for the crops. This isn't just for looks. Every single plant there has a job. Some of them attract bees and other pollinators, which is obviously a huge help. Others provide a home for birds and beneficial insects that prey on the pests you don't want. It's a completely natural, self-regulating pest control system. And those trees do more than just house-friendly bugs. They act as a windbreak, protecting the fields from harsh winds that can damage plants and dry out the soil. When it rains hard, the deep roots of these trees and shrubs hold all that precious topsoil in place, preventing it from just washing away. Now, you'd think that giving up all that space for trees and shrubs would mean smaller harvests. But when researchers compared them, they found that Amish farms were producing yields that were almost identical to their high-tech neighbors. In some crops, like lettuce, they were actually getting slightly more out of each acre. The real difference, though, shows up when the weather gets extreme. We already know their soil helps them handle a drought. But what about the opposite problem? Way too much rain. During one period of intense rainfall, conventional farms in the area lost about 20% of their crops. The fields were just too waterlogged. But the nearby Amish farms, they lost less than half that amount. It's because all those years of composting and smart rotation have created a soil that acts more like a sponge. It can absorb huge amounts of water without drowning the crops, and it holds onto that moisture for when times get dry. One expert explained that the stress from extreme weather doesn't degrade their soil. It actually makes it stronger. It's a system designed not just to endure a crisis, but to actually improve because of it. But this resilience isn't just about surviving a bad season. It's about surviving for generations. And that's where the trees come back in, because they are the family's long-term savings plan. Think about it. Those rows of trees aren't just a fence or a windbreak. They're a living, growing bank account. This is the key to understanding their whole approach. As one researcher from Cornell University put it, they think in decades. Every single decision they make assumes they'll still be farming that same piece of land 30 years from now. When you think that far ahead, planting a tree isn't just a task for today. It's a strategic investment for the future. Now, you might hear harvesting trees and think, that sounds like the opposite of being sustainable. But here's the surprising part. Because of careful management over the last several decades, America's hardwood forests are actually growing twice as fast as they're being cut. The country has almost 3 times the number of trees it did back in 1953. So, for these families, a well-managed plot of trees isn't about using something up, it's about participating in a cycle. The trees are a renewable resource, just like corn or hay, but on a much longer timeline. Decades after being planted, a single mature black walnut or oak tree can be worth thousands of dollars. That timber can be used to build a new barn, or it can be sold to provide the down payment for a new farm when one of their children starts their own family. It's a safety net, a college fund, a retirement plan, all growing quietly at the edge of the field. It's a system designed to make sure the family never has to sell the farm in a crisis. They can just sell a few trees instead. They're literally planting a paycheck for their grandkids. And that forward thinking isn't just a defense mechanism to save the farm, it's the engine that helps the family grow. Because for these communities, the ultimate goal hasn't changed for centuries: to own your own piece of land, to work it, and most importantly, to pass it on to your children. It's a simple ambition, but in the modern world, it's incredibly difficult to achieve, especially in places like Lancaster County, where farmland is scarce and the price for a single acre can be astronomical. For most people, buying a farm means taking on a lifetime of debt. So how does a family with 7 or 8 kids give each of them a chance to start their own farm? You can't just keep splitting the original homestead. Pretty soon the plots would be too small to support anyone. This is where the trees change the entire equation. They aren't just a savings account for a rainy day. They are the family's expansion plan. Think about it. When a son gets married and is ready to start his own family, they don't necessarily have to go to a bank for a massive loan. Instead, the family goes to the fencerow. They can selectively harvest a few mature trees. Trees that might have been planted by their own parents 30 or 40 years earlier. Selling that high-quality timber can generate tens of thousands of dollars. That cash becomes the down payment for a new farm. A fresh start for the next generation, without the crushing weight of a huge mortgage. It's a brilliant system of self-funded growth. And of course, one of the very first things that new young farmer will do on their property? They'll plant rows of trees along their own fields. They're not just planting wood, they're planting a future for their own kids, continuing a cycle that turns a simple piece of land into a legacy that can last for generations. But this system isn't just about the far-off future. It delivers huge advantages right now, in the dirt, every single season. Because this way of farming is a powerful defense against the one thing no farmer can control: the weather. This was put to the test in a major way just a few years ago. One year, the region got hit with way too much rain. All the typical modern farms nearby reported losing almost a quarter of their crops. But the farms using this system, they only lost about 7 to 11%. Then the very next year, the exact opposite happened: a brutal mid-season drought. This time, the difference was even bigger. The conventional farms lost up to 30% of their harvest. The Amish farms, they lost less than half that. So, what's the secret? It all comes down to the soil. After decades of this cycle, the ground itself becomes something different. It's packed with so much rich organic material that it basically acts like a giant sponge. When it rains too much, the sponge-like soil lets the extra water drain away so the plant roots don't rot. And when it's dry, that same sponge holds onto moisture, keeping the crops alive when others are withering. This isn't just a happy accident. One researcher at Cornell University, Dr. Catherine Morrison, says it's a brilliant system that functions like precision medicine for the land. She points out that most people think crop rotation is just about planting different things. But what these farmers have actually built is a detailed plan to constantly heal and improve the soil. While modern farming is often focused on getting the biggest possible yield in one good year, this system is, in her words, winning the real game. It produces nearly the same amount of food, but at the same time, it's building up the value of the soil itself, year after year. It creates a farm that doesn't just survive a crisis like a drought or flood, it actually comes out the other side even stronger. Now, this whole idea completely flips the script on what we think of as good farming. Because the modern assumption is simple. To get the most food out of an acre, you need chemicals and a single massive crop. That's just how it's done. But when researchers actually measured it, they found something shocking. Across farms in Ohio, Indiana, and Pennsylvania, they saw that Amish yields were almost identical to their conventional neighbors. For sweet corn, they were producing just under 9,000 pounds per acre, only a tiny fraction less than the big modern farms. And for some crops like lettuce, they were actually growing more.